What's up YouTube, Justin Fuller, and today I'm outside of a 2021 Subaru Forester Touring, and I'm going to show you how it competes against things like the Honda CR-V and how it stacks up to the other competition out there in that compact SUV market. So let's hop on in. Alright guys, so let's talk about what's underneath the hood inside of this Subaru Touring. So you've got a 2.5 liter engine that's running out to a CVT transmission. Now you're putting out 182 horsepower, which is giving you 26 miles per gallon in the city and then 33 on the highway. So what I'm going to do right now is do a couple things. First, I'm going to throw up a comparison on the screen so you can see a horsepower comparison of how this Subaru compares to some of the other vehicles out there in the market. Now, secondarily, after you've taken a look at that comparison, I want to talk about the miles per gallon. So I'm going to throw another comparison up on the screen so you can understand where this car competes against things like the CR-V and some of the other compact SUVs out there in the market. After you've taken a look at that, let's keep on moving. All right guys, so before we talk about the interior of the vehicle, let's talk about the outside and give you a quick walk around. So as we move around the car, I'll point out that it does have a nice 18-inch alloy wheel on it. As you come up, you do have these silver with turn indicators built in, and they are breakaway mirrors, so you'd be safe there. Now, as you continue to move around, you do have privacy glass on the back, and I'll point out that you do have roof rails on the top and a panoramic moonroof that runs the front end portion of the back of the vehicle. Now, as we come back down and around, I'll bring it back around to the back end of the vehicle. You can see you have nice big brake lights. You do have a brake light spoiler sitting up on the top of the car, and then a shark fin as far as listening to your radio. Now, it is badged, so of course, all of these models are going to be all-wheel drive, running with that horizontal engine, and then of course, it is badged over here, Forester Touring model. Now on the back, I will point out that you can see that it does have parking sensors in the bumper, and then it has a nice, off-colored skid plate down below. Now as we come around on the right side of your car is where you're gonna find the gas cap, so a little bit different from your typical vehicles, and I do like that it is connected to the door locks, so just a nice feature that they've done. Now as we move back around up to the front of the vehicle, I will remind you that being a focus on safety, you are gonna notice that this car does have the eyesight system set up. So you can see up here, there's a couple windows with cameras that are going to help detect cars out in front of you, detect lines as you go down the road and things of that nature. Now up front, you can see that you do have the LED daytime running lights, your standard beams, and then you do have the LED fog lights down here. And then coming across, you do have the nice grille setup with the logo dropped into it. All right, guys, so if you're looking at an SUV, you're probably going to be concerned about things like cargo space. So let's talk about the back end of this vehicle. So as we come on in, I'll point out a couple things. First, you'll see that they do have the all-season floor mats and the standard carpeted floor mats, along with a net system that's in here and the privacy protector, right? So if you want to protect anybody from seeing those, and then you do have privacy glass up top. So there should be no reason that really anybody has to see any of your belongings. Now, of course, this does pop out if you need to remove it, and then your seats do fold down. So in the back here, I'll point out that you have switches you can pull. You can see I've thrown one seat down there, and then over here, I can throw my secondary seat down and get to it right there. So you've got quite a bit of space in the back of this vehicle. So let's talk about cargo comparisons. So the first one I'm gonna do is with these seats flipped up. Hey, look at how much cargo space this vehicle has compared to some of the other vehicles out there in the market. Now, secondarily, with the seats flipped down, I wanna talk to you about another comparison of total cargo space. So I'm gonna throw that up on the screen too, that you can get an understanding of what kind of cargo space are you really working with when you're talking about this car compared to some of the other vehicles out there, much like one of its competitors, the Honda CR-V. Now, before we leave the back end, I do want to point out that, of course, you do have some additional storage under here, which is kind of cool that they've done. So if you need to throw anything in here, and then underneath, you do have a spare to this vehicle. So one, just good to know that it has a spare because a lot of vehicles these days are moving away from that, so be aware. All right, guys, so here I am in the second row of this vehicle, and I'll point out that you actually have quite a bit of space here, and quite a bit of leg space. So pretty happy to be sitting in the back of this. And of course, we're going to talk about a comparison of that. So I'll just go ahead and throw that up on the screen first so that you can get an understanding for, hey, if I'm comparing the second row leg space in this vehicle to some of the other vehicles out there in the market, what does that look like? Now, after you've taken a look at that, I want to point out and talk about a couple things. This is a touring model, so of course it is going to come with that leather interior, and you can see that it has perforation on this. And then you've got kind of a graphite finish on the seats and door handles here to give you kind of a trimmed, sporty look. Of course, I do have some seat back pockets that I can store stuff in if I need to. And then in the back, you do have AC vents, and I will point out that this model is heated in your back seats, along with giving you two USBs. So not only do you have two USBs here, but you have two USBs up front, which we'll go over here in just a second. Outside of that, you can look up and see that your panoramic moonroof comes almost all the way back into your second row. So kind of nice that you have that nice big opening if that's something you're interested in. Now, when it comes to the front row, I want to talk to you about seating and, of course, airbags as we get into the car. So I'm going to spin you around here and point out that you do have 8 airbags in this car. So 2 front, 2 side, 2 torso, and 2 full curtain running in this car. So safety always going to be a focus for the Subaru brand. Now, down here, I will point out that you have the powered seats along with your lower lumbar support. And then across on the other side, you additionally have a powered seat there. So knowing that you have powered seats on both sides in a touring model is kind of something I would come to expect. So, other than that, related to seating, I will point out that you do have the memory seating right here, so I can store it to driver 1 and driver 2, so just be aware of that. All right, so let's talk about the dash layout inside of this Subaru Forester Touring. So I'm gonna start you down here over on the left side. So the first thing I wanna point out is gonna be related to your tailgate. So obviously I can pop it completely open, or I have a memory option. It's cool that they give you 2 options, so if you wanna pop it open in your garage versus just out in a normal parking lot, you have that advantage. Now, SRH is gonna be related to your headlights, right? So it gives them the ability to shift as you drive to help keep the eyes and light on the road. So a really cool system that you won't find in a lot of vehicles out there. Now over here is going to be your dimmer related to your screen up here. So obviously I can dim that and light it up as I need to go. Now related to this, of course, vehicle stability assist, so it works with your traction control to make sure you're holding on and keeping traction to whichever wheel has better traction in the event of a skid. And then moving across your idle start stop, a feature I've never been a huge fan of, but I know that it exists and some people prefer it, just allowing the car to turn off when you're at stoplights and places like that to save as far as gas mileage goes. Now moving across is going to be related to your parking sensors off the back of the vehicle, so related to like a blind spot system, so that is what's going to be right here. And then your eyesight system. Eyesight system is set up a lot like Honda's lane keep assist and adaptive cruise control. So in the event that I start to leave my lane, it'll alert me. And the event that I'm looking like I'm gonna rear into another car, first it's gonna alert me and then help apply the brakes to help prevent that accident. So that eyesight system is working off of these cameras that are up here. Now, as you come across the steering wheel, you've got quite a bit of buttons on here. So up here, you've got, of course, your source button, which will allow you to jump through different options as far as audio goes. And then my info button. So if I wanted to pull up and see weather, if I wanted to get any of that info in my top display up here. So kind of nice to know that you can get your general trip, your computer info as far as your date, and anything related to the eyesight system, right? And then of course your volume controls. Now Bluetooth is going to be located right here. So easy enough to access. And then underneath here, I've got some triggers that allows me to trigger through these different screens up here. Mostly it's gonna be your tripometer, your speed, you know, kind of the normal expectations that you would see up here as far as what you would see. And then your PSI. Now this is really cool that you won't find in like a Honda. They are giving you the PSI per tire. So I love that you can see that versus just knowing that, hey, one of my tires is low, but I don't know which one. While we're up here, I'll point out that you do have your gas gauge down below. And then up top, you have kind of an MPG on the go. So kind of instantaneous as you drive. Now, as you come across the other side, of course, I have my Honda Sensing kind of styled setup, so I can set my cruise control and then set the distance it keeps between me and the car in front of me. So same thing, applying that to where if they slow down, it'll allow me to slow down, and when I get up from bottom, it'll take me back up to my speed. So that's what these are going to play a role in. And then of course, related to my steering wheel as far as my lane keeping assist system, right? And then of course underneath there, I do have a heated steering wheel, so I'll point out those buttons as well. Now up here, I'll just point out that you have auto on-off headlights and your fog light controls right here. And then on the other side, your windshield wipers for the front and the back of the vehicle. So let's talk about the touchscreen. All right, guys, so let's talk about the touchscreen inside of this car. So the first thing I'll point out is, of course, you have the option of Bluetooth, right? So if you haven't connected up one, which I've already connected mine, it'll even show your battery life on this, which is kind of cool. You don't always find that in every feature. It shows who I use as far as my provider. So some cool things that it's doing from here. Now I'm gonna jump back to that home button. You do have a mapping system built into this car, so you can take advantage of it, or you could jump over to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which I have. I use Android Auto, so I'd have access to Google Maps. If you're an Apple user, you'd have access to Apple Maps, Waze. Waze works for both, and then of course, Apple Maps, Waze, and Google Maps if you'd like also. So just know that you have different options as far as that goes. Now, as far as media goes, you can jump in here. I don't have any media hooked up as far as USB or a CD in, which I'll point out you do have a CD player in this car, which is kind of wild. You don't see those land in as many cars anymore. Now, over on the apps, this just gives you some different options you can access, whether it be Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, AHA, which is an app you used to actually find in Hondas, which just give you access to podcasts and you know, different music and different things of that nature. So just kind of a different place to grab some media. It is Pandora compatible, so nice to know is additionally there too. Now, you do have Subaru Starlink, which I'll point out there's actually a button up here, which is kind of like a you know, like an OnStar kind of setup. So just know that you can take advantage of that if this is something you have. Now, as we move back out of that, I'll point out you can jump into your settings here. Now, the settings are much like what I'm used to that you would find typically in a Honda. So as far as sound, you can get into your audio settings. You know, Bluetooth, if you need to add a new device, very simple to get to and do. Navigation system, you can change there. Now, as far as vehicle, Very easy for me to work through as far as understanding. So keyless entry system, things like, hey, I want to change my driver to where when I touch the door handle with that smart key entry, it'll open all the doors versus just one of the doors. So very easy to make these changes inside of the car. Now, if I jump back to settings and go to vehicle, auto door unlock. So door unlock, it's set to where, 10 miles an hour, it'll automatically lock the doors. You can do it when you shift out of park or turn it off. So very easy to get into these, and they're set up very much like a Honda of something I'm very accustomed to, right? And then when you shift out of park, it automatically locks the doors with some different options here too. So very easy to see what these options are and how they work. Of course, you can jump back into Android Auto. If you're not familiar with Android Auto, I will point out that not only do you have the mapping systems, but you have access to things like media-wise, Spotify, Pandora, podcasts, your Messenger, the Subaru option here. If I want to jump back into their menu, Waze, Google Maps, Apple Maps. There's several different things here. So I'll throw a list of 15 of the most common apps that people use up on the screen so that you can check that out. After you've looked at that, we'll kind of keep moving along here. And I'll just point out that, of course, you can add a shortcut. And then, of course, you do have a standard radio set up with FM, AM, and then Sirius XM radio. Now, you, of course, have all these quick jumps here. And I've got some plastic on it, so you're going to catch some glare right now. But it is kind of a glossier plastic, so just be aware of that. And then down below, of course, I have my AC controls, so I can control left and right separate of each other. So be aware of that. Now, as you scoot all the way down, you can see I have two USBs under there. I do have a, 3.5 millimeter jack, and then a power outlet in here. Now I'm going to move my phone out of the way here so we can see the rest. Of course, your parking brake, some of your shifting as far as your driving modes that you can go through, and it'll throw you up this nice LED, or excuse me, this nice descriptor. So definitely cool that you have deep snow, mud, some kind of different options that you can kind of target through depending on what kind of conditions you're driving in. And then of course, as far as your seats go, if you want to heat them, high and low settings for your driver and passenger side, and then you of course have it for the back of this vehicle additionally. So kind of cool there. Then you have your standard cup holders and all your normal stuff, and then an additional power outlet down there. As we move up top, kind of what I'd call your standard stuff, auto dimming mirror. It does have a compass in it, which is always nice. Your panoramic moonroof, your sunglasses holder, and then I'll swivel around to the back so you can see, looking out your back end, you've actually got quite a bit of visibility in this car. So your blind spot really isn't bad at all compared to some of the other vehicles out there in the market. All right, guys, so that's a quick rundown of the 21 Subaru Touring model. Now, typically this car is going to compete with things like the CR-V and the Rav4, right? So from the outside view, they offer a lot of very close similarities and a lot of the same features. It's just going to be small stuff. Things that I like on the Subaru that you won't see necessarily on a CR-V are going to be things like being able to set the adjustable height on the tailgate. That's a cool feature that you don't necessarily find on the CR-V. In the very back of the car, when you flip it up and you're looking at the spare, there's some additional space down there that you could really take advantage of in the Subaru that you won't quite find as much in that CR-V. So it's little things, right? You've got the eyesight set up, which is much like Honda Sensing, but I do like that they have the headlights set to where when you turn, they shift with you. Really cool feature that you won't find on a Honda, right? So outside of that, though, as far as safety goes, they're both 5-star crash ratings. These are competing at the very highest level, so you're looking for minute details at that point as far as what you can be nitpicky about. So let's revisit those comparisons just so I can remind you about them and you can really understand how these cars really stack up. So let's start at horsepower. So the Subaru is going to give you 182 horsepower out of that turboed engine. It is a Boxster, so it just means that engine is flipped on its side. It's something Subaru's been doing for a long time, so just a little bit different from your classic engine setup. So check out the comparison on the screen so you can understand that horsepower comparison. Now, after we've looked at that, we should talk about miles per gallon, because this is a compact SUV, and chances are you're getting this for space, but you also still want to get those MPGs. Now, this car gets 26 in the city and 33 on the highway, so check out the screen so that you can see what those other vehicles are getting and how the car stacks up, so you can understand, hey, which one is really the one that I should be in, right? If this really matters to you because it's a big commuter car for you. Now, after we've done that, we should really talk about spacing inside of the vehicle. So whether it be cargo space or space for people, depending on if it's a family vehicle you're using this for, or you're really buying it for cargo space because it is an SUV. So in the very front row, I'm going to throw up that leg space comparison so you can see that on screen. I will remind you that the Subaru was actually surprisingly spacious in the front row. I really did enjoy that I had a lot of leg room when it came to that vehicle. Now, after we've talked about the front row, we should jump into the second row, because chances are if you got kids, you got dogs, or you're planning on using that for, cargo space, it's going to play a role. So I'm going to throw up that leg space comparison for that second row so you can see that and understand where it stacks up additionally too. Now, after we visited that, we should talk about cargo space. And there's two different comparisons that I want to do. The first being the classic flipped up seats to where you can see, hey, if I have the seats up, people are sitting in the back, how much cargo space do I have to take advantage of? Whether I'm throwing strollers in it, I'm throwing activity bags in it, whether it's my kids' stuff, right? Whether it's my stuff, right? Or just, whatever I may be using. Maybe I'm in a band and I do amps and subs and speakers and, guitars and instruments and things like that, right? I need to know what space I have just classically set up when I can still put people in the car. Now, after that, let's fold those seats down and talk about how much total cargo space we can take advantage of. So I'm gonna throw that up on the screen too so you can understand that comparison. So after we've looked at that, that's pretty much every comparison that we went through today, and hopefully that'll give you a better understanding. Now, as I said earlier, there are some things that this car offers that I really do like that you won't find necessarily in a Honda, and I don't think in a Toyota Rav4 either, but it really comes down to just what you prefer, right? You might get behind the wheel and just really like the way another one drives, and knowing that all these are competing at pretty much the same level, which is a high level, but that there's small little things that this one may have this one little feature, much like, hey, you've got the touchscreen and then the dash up top that has a little screen up there too. I like it, but that's something CRVs used to do, but they just don't do anymore. That's part of their old body style, right? So it just depends on your preferences at a point. So hopefully that helps. I have a couple quick favors to ask you. First, hit the like button. It makes me feel good inside. I like to know that you're watching. What can I say? I'm a little bit of a narcissist. I need that love in my life. Now, secondarily, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you don't want to hit the like button, maybe there's a reason why, and maybe you should put a comment down. Or maybe you want to make a request. Is there something you'd like to see a video on? Or maybe there's something you feel like I missed or that I would go over. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think, or let me know what you need. If you need help with something, maybe I can help you out to understand it better and how it stacks up against those other cars out there in the market. Now, third, I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel. Let me not only tell you about Hondas, but much like the Subaru, other cars that compete directly with Honda, right? It's nice to know what else is out there in the market. And then lastly, I hope that you'll share the video. Are you in a Facebook group? You got some friends that are considering maybe a CRV or Subaru, or they're kind of on the fence and they don't know what they want? Well, hey, why not send them a video that'll show them 3 different comparisons all at once so they can really know how a car stacks up and understand some of the similarities and some of the differences that they offer. Other than that, I want to say thank you again for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, and later, guys!